There it is right there. Okay, so we are recording now. I don't know if I pushed on the cloud or on my computer. Oh well. Andy, that's my name. We're doing Web 42 and we're talking about advanced styling techniques. So today we're going to talk about style components. So I'm going to share my screen, share, and we'll get going. Today's pretty cool. Kind of fun stuff what we're going to be doing today. All right. Up to this point, how is everyone feeling about React? Okay, let me read this. Oh, okay, yeah. So we're going to be talking about that today, Ryder. So Ryder asked if his dev friends, they are pretty adamant about keeping their CSS out of their JS files. Yeah. How I'm curious how they like React, or if they even use React, or are they just using vanilla JS and they don't use any libraries or frameworks or anything. We'll talk about that today, actually. All right, so let's jump over here to our canvas. So today we're going to be talking about advanced styling techniques. So hopefully you went through the warm-up and then you tried to do a create React app. And then if anybody went through that and was able to accomplish it, good job. If anybody has any trouble with that, that's okay. Come to office hours and we'll get it working because you're going to end up using it. We're going to talk about it today. When I was getting my new computer all installed, and I had to go through all of the curriculum when I started at Lambda instructing, so I was kind of familiar with everything. I had a lot of trouble with getting Create React app working because some of the docs that they say and some of the solutions were kind of wonky. So I was able to get it working though. So the next thing we're going to talk about is React components using React Strap. We'll just kind of briefly mention it, and I'll kind of briefly mention it right now. If you have used this, that's awesome. So this is very similar to Bootstrap. What it does is it kind of gives you this whole library's worth of components that are styled out. So say buttons, they look, well, we can kind of look at those in a little bit, but buttons card components, themes, they have a whole bunch of stuff that is kind of boilerplated out for you, and then you can just import it and then just use it. And then the other thing we're going to talk about is what we're mostly going to spend our time on today is the style components and how we can use them in our React components to style them, which is going to go completely contrary to what Ryder's friends say about keeping CSS out of our JS files, because we're totally going to bring them in. All right, let's get going. I'm going to do one more check over here, wherever my, oh man. You know the little sharing your screen thing bar that goes around? It jumps around everywhere where it wants to be. I always have it in one spot, but then it decides to move wherever it wants to go. Okay, so I pasted the code one more time in the chat. So that should work. Someone go try it, make sure that works. That way I know I've done the right one. I think it's the right one. Okay. All righty, let's take a look at this one right here. So the Bootstrap or React application with Create React app. So hopefully you did go through this, but we'll kind of walk through this a little bit. So it's kind of cool. You're going to notice you do something else. You use this NPX instead of NPM if you went through all of this to get this working. So Create React app, what it does is it basically builds out an entire application for you, all of the scaffolding for you, and so that you can just get up and code. So let's go to the documentation. So I just clicked on that down there inside of our module, right? So I click documentation. It pulls us to create a new React app on React's docs. But then what we want to do is we actually want to go to the other documentation. So then what I did is I clicked on Create React App, takes us to Create React App's repo on GitHub. And then if you click on is it the user guide? it takes you here. So this is the one you want to go to, create react.dev. So on here, this is where you can learn everything you need to about getting up and going and like kind of what it does. This is what the command you'll end up running. So it's npx instead of npm, right? So it's npx, you got to notice that difference. And then you call its like its library or whatever. This is the command we have to call for that script. And then the last piece is the name of the directory for your whole application. So we'll run one here in just a second. So if we come over here to the docs, we can kind of see the getting started. So right here is pretty crucial, this bulletin point right here. You need to make sure that you don't have create React app installed globally. So if you come back over here to our canvas, you don't need to do this right now, so don't worry about installing this or anything like that. We're just kind of going over this. You need to make sure that you don't have it installed globally. And in order to do that, what you can do is you can run this command to see what you have running globally or installed globally. So if I do npm list -g in my terminal, here, I'll make this a little bit bigger. So npm list -g, it will print out everything that I have listed or installed globally. The new npm update. So if you're like up to date on npm, you don't need the -- depth equals 0, but you can use that -- depth equals 0. So then these are all of the global packages that I have installed, npm global packages. So like I have that fkill CLI package, the less stuff, and then I have the node GYP, right? We ran into some of those, and then a couple other things. All right, so now to use this, what we can do is we can run the command. So npx create react app, and then whatever I want it to be. So I'm inside of a directory called GP. This is right where I've been putting everything for the guided projects. So I'm going to call this demo or demo app. If I press enter, what happens is it goes through and it starts installing all of its packages. It starts building out everything and running these scripts that it needs to. If we come back over here to the getting started page inside of Get React App, we can scroll down. See, we're going through this, right? After we do this, we're getting everything going. This is what we did. We ran the npm or the npx. If you have yarn installed, that's what you'll end up doing. Then if we keep going down here, we can see the output. So this is what it's going to be outputting. It's a big file structure. So we can kind of see like what's going on in here. We've got a README, we've got all our node modules, our package JSON, we know about that stuff. And then we have this public folder and the source folder. And then inside of our source folder, we have a bunch of other stuff going on. Perfect. Now that this is done, we can come back over here and kind of read what's going on. So it gives us commands that we can run. Like this is just a little output that it tells us. So it can tell us that we can run npm start. We've known that command before, right? So nothing crazy. We can run the build, which bundles the app into a static files for production. So like if you're building this for a production app that you're ready to put out on the web, you'd end up running this so it compiles everything right. So when you start adding tests, and we're going to add tests next week, we're going to learn about Cypress testing. But if you run any tests, you run npm tests. And then if you ever want to like take full control to be able to, manipulate some of the file structure and some of the packages and stuff that you're using, you end up running npm run eject. But once you do that, like it says, you can't go back. And so like what it does right now is it keeps everything bundled nicely together, and then you can update everything using create React app. As soon as you eject, you have to manually update everything. Then it tells you we suggest that you begin by typing these two things, cd into our demo app, right? Because we're not even inside of there yet, and then npm start. So I will do that. I will cd into it, but then I'm going to open it up into VS Code so we can take a look and kind of see what's going on. So we have, just like we saw over here, this file structure. There it is right there. We have our public, we have our source, And then inside of here, I mean, nothing new. We've seen all of this, right? So there's our app.js. This is just a component. It's exporting at the bottom of the page versus where we were doing it up here, right? Export default, and then that we're just doing it at the bottom. You can see it's a component, it's capitalized. And then inside of here, we're doing some HTML stuff. We see we have our CSS, and what this one does is it comes with just a little bit of reset, not much, just setting the margins to 0 on the body and then setting some fonts. And then if we come over to this one, we see more styles for the app. And inside of, we have a test file. This is just how you run tests. We're going to learn about testing. I love tests. Tests are the best. Then a package. If we look at the package JSON, we've looked at these package JSONs before. Nothing crazy here. We see our dependencies. Inside of there, there's a couple files or a couple libraries for testing. Then we see our React and React DOM. We've used those before. Another one called React scripts. This is what's used in order to run all of the NPM stuff for Create React App and to keep everything up to date when you run some of those. And then right here, this scripts is what we use, right? Like NPM start, build, test, eject. So that's what we end up running. So now if we open up our terminal, and we run NPM start, it's going to go through and get it up and going. And what it does is it automatically opens it up into our browser. As soon as it's up and going, there it is. So at this point, everything's built out. We just ran one line, right? npx create React app, demo app. I named it demo app. And we have a complete React app up and going. So now at this point, what we could do is we could come and start adding stuff to this. So remember here, our index.js, like this is where our app is being placed onto our HTML. Remember the React DOM. So this is just our one HTML element. So this one is being wrapped in a strict mode. And then where it's going to the root document get element by ID. So if we look in the public in our index HTML, we see that we have that one div tag with the root, and then that's where all of our application is put to. So nothing crazy, nothing new. We've seen a lot of this stuff. If we jump into our app.js, right, and we have this side by side, maybe if I can find the little, wow. There we go. Whew. Sorry, that took way longer than I anticipated. So if we put these kind of side by side, we can kind of see what's going on here. We can jump in here and we can add in whatever we want and start developing. So if we want to do an H1 tag, we can say, hello all. As soon as we save this, check it. Save it, it automatically updates over here in our browser, so we don't have to refresh. So now we have access and we can just start developing. So then if we wanted to, we could come in here and delete everything except for the piece I added and get going. You can start adding, like you could add a components folder inside of here and start building out all of your components and then start rendering them, and away you go. So this is a great way to get up and going on a React app super fast without having to worry about all the boilerplate stuff. It's already built out for you. All right, so now that we've kind of talked about this, I'm going to shut that down, close that tab, that tab, come back, and we're going to get going on today's project. So I'm going to jump back up into my GP folder, wherever you are, and I'm going to do git clone. You know, we're doing the git clone every day. I'm going to grab the copy link, paste it in. I'm going to come over here into our repo, and I'm going to click the code button, the big green button, and then copy that to my dashboard or to my clipboard, and I will paste it. So we cloned it. How many of you are tired of me talking like this or saying the same thing every time? So we cloned it. Now we need to CD into it. CD web guided project styling components. we're into it. I'm gonna run code, open it up into VS Code, and open the README. So inside of this README, we see we have clone the repo, navigate into the project folder, and then run npm i. So we're going to do that now. npm i or install, it's the same thing, right? We've all done this. Fantastic. And now we can run npm start. It's running on localhost 1234. Command click, and it will pop open over here. All right, so we see that we are using yesterday's stuff, right? We went through, we built this out yesterday in our guide project, so we're going to be working on these. Okay, so how can we access or transfer the newly created React app on GitHub? So like if you created a React app on your computer and then you want to put it onto GitHub, is that the question? I think that's the question. So you would need to like do a git init, and then what that will do is create some tracking. So what I'll do is I'll find a good tutorial to send out so that way you can see how to do that. All right. Now that we're up and going, we see that we have, nothing crazy going on in here. We're over here. This is our README. I'm going to lower this because we want to see more code today. We're going to familiarize ourselves real quick with kind of what's going on. We see a couple new things. We see this new theme directory has a file in here, but there's nothing in it. We have our constants from yesterday. That's good. Nothing new there. We see our three components inside of our components directory. Those are from yesterday. And then we have our API mocks, which that's what's getting our data. Now, if we jump into the package JSON, we see a few extra things today. We see our Axios, that's good. We have this new one, MSW. We're not going to really care about that one today. That's doing some stuff for our API stuff. And then this styled components, this is the new piece right here. So this is what we're going to be learning about today, is styled components. So as we can see, inside of all of this, we have here's our index file, right? Inside of here, we have our components. We have this JS file, right? This JavaScript component. We have our CSS files, which has a bunch of stuff. And then we also have, inside of here, our HTML. So those are three separate concerns. You have markup, styling, and logic. So markup will be your HTML. Styling will be your CSS. And logic is your JS or your JavaScript. So this is what's called separation of concerns. And now sometimes people love to keep them, like everyone kind of formulates their own opinions and they want to keep them separate. Some people want them all together so that they're packaged up in one little nice and neat little component that can be called anywhere. And it takes care of its own styling and its own logic and its own markup. So if you remember these components right here, so we'll just jump into, say, the friend component. This friend component right here is it's just a component. And what does a component do? Do we remember what a component does? Here, the most simple way, what does a component do? That's my thread. I have a question. What is a component? The most simple answer you can think of. A reusable bit of UI. Perfect. Yeah, that's great. So I like to think of components as a function that takes in data and returns UI. So all this is a function that takes in some data and spits out UI. And it's reusable. Yeah, that's great. So one thing real quick, we do see something a little different. How many of you have seen this syntax before? Do we understand what's going on here? So just let's clarify this right here. This right here would be the same as if we, you know how we've been doing this const and then our props info and action equals props. And then up here, this was props, right? This is how we've been doing it for the last couple of days. It's just like this. Our component takes in props and then we destructure them. So we can go see those props where we're invoking this friend component. So if we go up to the app component, we can see, I'll make this wider. We'll set them side by side. We can see that on the left here, we have our friend component. Here it is right here. And then this friend component is passing in a couple props. It's passing in the info prop and the action prop. So those are our props that's passing in. So if we come over here, we see that we're consuming them. We're just structuring them right there, and we have our info and our action. Now, what this does by putting it up here is it just destructures it up here, coming in info and action. So this is the exact same as line 4. They work the same way. So it's just a cleaner, or I don't know if it's cleaner or if it's faster or what it is, but it's just another way of doing things. So don't get confused by that. If you see a component and then it's got an object and then it's got some keys in there, don't freak out. Just remember that this is the exact same thing as this. All it is destructuring the props. So you'll see this probably a lot, just because it's one less line of code. And then you're able to see what the friend component or what your component's props are taking in. We'll save this. I'm going to, I just remembered, I totally forgot. I got to run the magic code. Start GP. Okay. So today what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about styled components. So if we go to their docs, so I want everyone to open up a new tab in your browser and Google search styled components. So we're going to go to their actual documentation. So if we go to styled components right here, we land on their website, so we can learn all about them. So style components lets you write CSS into your apps without stress. That's cool. I haven't read that line yet. And so it's gonna look kind of wonky a little bit, but we're gonna learn about this and how to use it. So if we click on the documentation up there, and then if we click on motivation under basics, we can kind of go through this and kind of understand why we would even use this, or why we would want to use this. So the whole thing with what style components is wanting to do is it's wanting to enhance your React components with CSS and make them individual pieces, so that way you don't ever run into some things called leaky styles. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, leaky styles. But that's a big common thing. I used to run into that all the time when I was working. And the other cool thing is this, it calls it automatic critical CSS. What this does is it goes through and it makes sure that there's no extra style anywhere in your application, because it can go through programmatically and see, because everything's going to be housed in a component, it can see if there's extra styles just not being used anywhere, and it can automatically delete them. Also, same thing with that easier deletion as well. You can do it if it's not being used inside of your little component, you don't need it. So you can get rid of that zombie code. My favorite thing with this is the no class name bugs. So you run into this thing called leaky styles all the time, where you're styling your application, and you're trying to get, say, a box to move just the right place and be the right color, but somewhere else in the application there was another style with maybe the same class name that is overriding this one, and it just is a nightmare trying to override. So then you have to be even more specific, and you're adding more styles, and it just becomes an absolute nightmare. With this, style components actually generates class names for you, and they're like crazy unique characters. We'll see them in a little bit, and so like you can't ever duplicate those, because then they change every time too. Another cool thing with this is automatic vendor prefixing. So if you ever had to, if you've played with any styling before and you try to do, like say, for example, flex, you had to do a bunch of vendor prefixes, meaning like you had to do like WebKit -flex or something for Chrome, and then you had to do another one for Mozilla, another one for Safari, another one for Internet Explorer. You had to do a ton of these, and so this will do it automatically for you. So that's kind of the motivation behind why we're going to be doing this. The way you would install it is you would run npm install -f save styled components. We'll come over here to our package JSON, and we'll see that we don't have to run it because it's already inside of our dependencies. This is how I know I don't have to run that command, because it's already inside of here. If it wasn't in here, like say in a project that you're going to do, say tomorrow, and you need to, for your sprint challenge, make a styled component, you're going to have to run this command, npm install -f save styled components. So that's how you install it. Cool. So up to this point, we've kind of just learned about create React app and style components. We've kind of talked about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our first 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to actually start using style components and learn how they work. So I'm going to set a timer, and we'll be back in 5. All right, and we are back. Let's post the attendance code again. Right here, copy, paste. Cool. All right. Up to this point, does anybody have any questions about anything? So what I'm hoping to do, I'll kind of give you an outline for today, for today's guided project, is we're going to run through our application here, what we're going to be doing. And then towards the end, I want to leave a few minutes so that we can kind of talk about tomorrow's sprint challenge and how to best prepare for that. So that way you kind of know what to expect and what to make sure you're understanding and make sure you know how things are working. All right. Let's keep going. So the first thing that we're going to talk about right now is style components. All right, so let's open up our style components here, or our component here, and we're going to do some style components on this friend. So the first thing we need to do is everyone needs to open up their friend.js and code along with me. So when we have this open, we're going to use style components. So if we come over here, we can kind of like see, we could read through the docs and kind of see what's going on. So we can read the getting started. We can kind of look and see how stuff is working and then how it's using. So we see that we have this const title, right? So it's a variable and it's capitalized. And then we see this kind of weird syntax, style.h1, and then backticks, and then it looks like an object, key value pairs. So that's kind of interesting. And then when we are down here, we're invoking it, we're invoking this like a component, right? So we see that that's like a component. So let's kind of walk through this and try it out. So we have our friends app open up. I'm going to move this over a smidge so we can see it and come back over here. Okay, the first thing we need to do in order to use style components after we've installed it, so it's already installed, we have it right here, style components in our package. We need to import it. So what we do to import style components is we do import styled from styled components. Oops. So that's the first thing we do. So this is a default import, right? Because it's not wrapped in curly braces. So we know it's not a named component, it's just the default. Now inside of here, we have a couple rules. I'm gonna write a couple rules right here in comments that we have to follow when we use style components. Rule number one, our styled components are built outside of the components, the component they serve. So that's rule number one. Rule number two is they have to be capitalized, capital, I don't know how to spell capitalize, like that, the styled component. Rule number three, do not forget semicolons. See, I don't know if that's helpful or not, but we want those semicolons. Okay, so those are our three rules. So the first rule is style components are built outside of the component they serve. Rule number two is they have to be capitalized. And then rule number three, you can't forget your semicolons. Okay, so let's try this out. So the first thing we do is we're outside of this component. So here's our component right here on line 10. There's our component. So we're outside of this. Now we need to set up a variable. So it's best to set up the variable based on what you're going to be styling or what component you're going to be using or what it is. So we're going to build a style component that wraps this entire component. So we're going to replace this div with this style component. So we're going to call this, for our example, styled friend. Friend. I can type. So that's what we're going to call this one, right? So we're going to set up our variable styled friend. Then the next thing we need to do, if we remember that kind of wonky syntax, is we need to use our import. So we're going to use styled, and then this is an object. So we're going to use dot notation. And then the next piece is what we're going to be styling, or what HTML element we're going to be using to style this. So we can see down here on line 13, this is a div. And so since we're going to replace this whole div with a style component, we still want it to be a div. So we're going to do style div. And then the wonky part, we do backticks. So we have these backticks. We open them up, and then inside of this is like a CSS object, or like our CSS page. So if we come over here to our CSSs, we can see that we have these rules, right? And these rules are object-like, right? This is an object. We have a key and a value. So we're going to come back up into here, and we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to do key values. So let's do the first one. Let's do color, and let's do it red. Okay. Notice I put my semicolon. So cool. If we save this, nothing happens because we haven't used it, right? And our linter is yelling at us saying it's declared, but it's never used. So let's use this. So now what we can do is we can replace our div down here with our styled component. I don't know why it went inside of that div, but so now if we save this, we see that our text changes to red. Our color updates. So what we're doing here is we're declaring a div to have a color of red, and we're going to call it a styled component. So we're calling it styled friend. So it acts just like a normal HTML element, only it has some styles on it, some styles built into it. Now, if we come over here, open up our inspector, let's make this a little bit taller, go to our elements, open up this container inside of here. Right here, we see that there's this class on here, some jinky, wild characters, I guess that's what I'm going for, but they're super unique. So you can't ever like go in and change these things, right? So if I need to go a little taller and not click on the network. So if we bring, darn things. We can see right here, this K, capital Q, capital B, capital U, capital X, capital H. That's our style, right? That's where our color comes from. So this is generating a class name for us and then putting that style on there. And that's super hard to, you're not going to be writing your application somewhere else and come up with this class name, right? You're probably not going to. Cool. So let's keep going a little bit more. Let's play around with this a little bit. We can do more stuff inside of here. So let's do another one. Let's do font weight. And then let's say bold. And let's use our other backtick. For some reason it disappeared. So now if we save this, it's not working. Do you see why it's not working? What did I do? See my syntax error? So let's save this again. Now it's working. But I forgot a semicolon. That's because it's at the end. So now look, check it. If you don't have one up here, this is where it breaks. Because remember in CSS, like the bottom line technically doesn't need it, but just never forget it. Because then if you come in here and add a new one, you'll totally mess up. Okay, anyways, so cool. You can't really tell on my computer that it's bolded, but hopefully you're coding on your computer and you can see the difference. So like comment out this line and then come back over here and see on your computer, you can probably see. So let's keep going. Let's do something else. So if we're over here, we're not really doing anything other than making it red and bold. Why don't we do a hover effect? So if we do and hover, right? We want to change this color to say green. If we save this, come over here and we hover over it and it works green. So these are just styles. These are just CSS styles, nothing crazy. But it's kind of crazy the way we like are using them. The syntax is kind of janky. We're just not used to it. All right. So what we can do with this is we can actually go over here to our class right here, our friend class, and we can clean up our styles now. So we're using this class name of friend. Let's go take a look at this real quick. So we go to our styles CSS. We have a friend right here, right? And we're only using this stuff inside of our friend component. So let's copy and come back over here underneath and paste it in. So if we save this, nothing should change, right? Because we didn't, all I did was add those styles, but then I didn't take them away over here and we didn't get rid of this class name. So if we get rid of this class name, since we no longer need it, if we save, nothing changes. Perfect. So we just cleaned up our styles. We got rid of a class name because we have all of our classes inside of here. And then we can totally get rid of this whole rule over here and get rid of the zombie code. So we're already cleaning up our application and everything still works the exact same. All right, awesome. So now what we can do is we can come over here and we can actually do style components and sit inside of style components. So if we follow the rules, we're building outside of our our component that is going to be using. And then inside of here, we can do, say, we're going to create our variable name. So we're going to call this styled button. And then we have to use what we imported, style dot, and then what we're going to be the element that we want. So we're going to replace this one down here, this button. We're going to do style dot button and then our backticks. Okay, we're following this convention. It's outside of here. It's capitalized, and we haven't started yet. But as soon as we start, we'll use our semicolons. Okay, so inside of here, let's just change this color to say orange. Orange. Save this. Nothing changes, right? We don't see anything changing because we haven't used it yet. So let's use this. And we'll replace our button. We save this. Now all of a sudden we see that our button is orange. All right, we have some questions dropping in the questions thread. What's the and? Okay, so that's a pseudo selector for hover, the hover event. It's just a CSS hover. So if we come over here and we make this a little while, if we come down here to MDM right here, what this does is the hover is what we're adding to or what we're attaching to. But then what we're doing is inside of here, we're saying, okay, this is the end is saying use this div, and when it's hovering, do color of green. So it's just CSS selectors, like pseudo selectors. All right, back to friends. And then, So yeah, you can totally use all your pseudo selectors inside of here. And this is all just normal CSS. Everything inside of these are just regular CSS. It's just wrapped inside of those backticks instead of, on a style page. So all of this stuff that's happening, everything inside of this can be dropped into a styles component. All right, so we have this, and the way this is working, it works, but we don't necessarily need to do this because this would have been better to potentially style a component and build another component and then bring that component in, import it, and then use it. So what we can do to achieve the same thing without doing this is I'm going to comment this out so we can still see it. And I'm going to comment this out. I'm going to duplicate it and comment it out so you can kind of keep an eye on it. We're going to go to button. We're going back to our button. If we save this, this should go back to normal. What we can do is, since this is all just CSS, we can go inside of here and grab our button and say color orange. And it works the same way. So this is just all CSS. Awesome. So we can see, let's kind of just like review what we've done thus far. So we've imported styled from style components, so that way we can use this library. And now in order to use this, how we do it is we need to follow these 3 rules. We need to make sure that our style components are built outside of the component they serve. We need to capitalize the style component, and we need to not to forget to use our semicolons. Then what we do to use them is we create a variable. Our variable names are one of the hardest things to do in programming. So when you learn variable names, a convention for variable names, teach me, because they're one of the hardest things. So we set up our variable name, and then in order to use it, we use styled dot, because that's what we pulled in, right? And then it's whatever element that we're going to be replacing. So in this case, when we first started, this was a div. And then in this place down here, it was a button. So if you were going to do, say, an H1 or an H2 or an A tag, any of those HTML elements, you would do it after that dot. So style dot H1, style dot A, and then you can go through and make all of your style changes to that. And then to use it, you use it just like a React component. You use it in the alligators, right? Perfect. So we notice down here, if we saw this one, right, we're still passing in, or we're still doing like an on-click event down here. So we can totally do everything we can. All we're doing is changing the name, and it's adding those styles to it. All right. So now that we've done that, let's do a little bit more. So let's go through and make sure everything is working. So we have all of these cleaned up. Okay, we're good there. We're styled friend, looks good. We don't have our class name anymore, so we're cleaning this up fairly nicely. Let's go ahead and keep going. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a few more styles up here. So we can do media queries. Do them the same way. So we can do at media, and then we can say, we'll say max width equal to 550 pixels. And then we will just say width 100%. Just if I could do percent. So we can add those. Any styling that we want. See that? Do you see how that jumped? So watch the buttons. So as soon as I don't know if that, there's going to be a number right up. I'm pointing at my computer over here. So there's going to be a number where this pointer is up here in the top right. Because I have my inspector open, I can see, okay, I'm going down to 800, 789. That might be really small. But with our media query, things push around, and we're able to change stuff. So we must have a other style over here. Some other style somewhere else, leaky style somewhere. All right. So that works nicely. It goes over to 100% and then cuts back. So the max width is at 550. Perfect. Okay. So now what we can do is we can go through and we can look at our HTML elements. Let's go down here and kind of look and see what's going on again. So we have all of these different class names, and you see that it changed. Remember the first time it was like H something. So if we refresh this page, we come back in here, we see that that's the same, but then if we come over here and we update it, it'll update this class name. So we added a color of orange, and let's say we let's change this to, let's say this blue. We come over here, we can look inside of here and we can see that those styles change every time we update those. So that way we run into the risk of not having to have those leaky styles. Now up here in the head, we can kind of see what else is going on. We have our style sheet right here, another style sheet, this link for our favicon. And then we have another one down here, this style sheet, and it's got this crazy name for each one of these, building it out into our head. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our next 5-minute break. We're at a great stopping point, and then we're going to learn how to use these dynamically. We're going to learn about a theme and how we can build out a theme and then pass and update styles based on props. Okay, so let's take our 5-minute break, and I'll see you in 5. All right, and we are back. So let's continue on. I see a couple questions. I'm not 100% sure why the hover is not working. Zach, do you have it and is it inside of here like this? So you've got to be inside of your style component wherever you are. And then you've got to use this syntax, the ampersand colon hover, and then open up your new style rule and drop it in there. I'm not 100% sure what your code looks like. And then do we still need style sheets if we're going to apply style components? Yes and no. Each one of these is going to be their own little individual reusable components, right? That are actually styled at this point. If you want some still overarching like CSS for, say, the whole page, you want to have some general stylings around there, you could totally keep a style sheet. So however you want to do it. Yes, we were just adding the style components from our guided project yesterday. Are you meaning for today's module project? If you're just adding style components to the module project? So I use the code. So I'm not 100% sure, Zach, what's going on. Just keep following along. See if you can see what's going on. Maybe stop your terminal and restart it and see if that'll work. If not, what I can do is we can jump on and figure out that after the lecture or the guided project. I don't know why I called it a lecture. Okay, cool. Let's jump back into this, and we're going to do some cool stuff now. So what you can do with style components is you can incorporate a theme. So you can build out some styles, some general styles that you want, and then you can pass those around as props and then use them. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here to our theme index, and we're going to open that up. Okay, and then right inside of here, we're going to build out a theme object. So we're going to just build out an object right here, and we're going to export it. So we're going to do export default, and then we're going to create a theme. So let's start typing in some of these style rules. So this is just an object with a key value pairs. So let's say like a primary color. And let's say that this primary color is going to be royal blue. Let's do another one. Let's do like, say, a secondary color. And let's do this as crimson. Crimson. Let's do a third color, tertiary, right? Tertiary color. And let's call this one lime. So let's think of some other styles we need inside of here. Some other things we could do. We could have a danger color, right? And that one could be red. We could have just our normal black and whites for fonts and backgrounds and such. So we could do black. We could do white. So we have access to those. Another thing we could do is we could update our breakpoint, right? Remember how we had that breakpoint? We could do our breakpoint. We could say this one's mobile. And then inside of here, we can say what it is. Max width is equal to 550 pixels. Something else we can do, since this is an object, right? And we know that paddings, we could have like multiple of these. Like we could have like a small, a medium, a large, an extra large, an extra large, blah, blah, blah. So we can set up some of these rules. Since this is just an object, we can nest an object inside of here. So we could do small, and we can set this to 4 pixels. Oops, 4 pixels. And we could do another one. We could say large. We'll say that one is 12 pixels. Cool. So let's have that. So all we've done right here is we've built out an object that we're going to use as part of our theme. So that way we can have access to, say, these colors or these CSS rules in one spot and then update them in one spot, and they can be sent throughout. So for example, say our primary color is royal blue right now, but then we get the designs back from the company we're working for, right? The design team come back and says, royal blue is not going to cut it. We need sky blue or something, or some new hex code character. And everywhere we've used primary color throughout our application, instead of going through and trying to find and replace all of those style rules, we have it in one spot that we can go through and update one place. And then it'll translate everywhere into the code. So now that we have this built out, our object, now we need to learn how we can use it. So let's jump back over to our style components. I'm going to make this just a bit wider. And we're going to go to advanced and theming. So it's the first one that comes up. So what we can do is, if we scroll down here, we can read through how themes work and the theme prop and how it works throughout the application. So the way we can do themes is we come over here into our application and we go to our most parent, or where we're at the wherever we want to introduce our theme. So in this case, we're going to jump all the way up into our index.js, and we're going to do it here. And we're going to wrap our entire app in this theme. Okay, so to do this, what we need to do is open up your index.js. At the top, so don't worry about this. This is how the API is being faked. So right under our React DOM, where our imports are going, we're going to do another one. We're going to import a named import this time from style components. And this one is called theme provider. And then we say from style components. So we've imported it. So now that we've imported it, we can use it. So the way we use it is we wrap our whatever components or component tree we want to use this theme, that's where we wrap it. So we're going to use it in our entire application, so we have access to it. So then what you do is you type in theme provider and use it just like a component. And then you wrap your app. So it's just like a component. We invoke it just like a component. And what it does is it allows us to keep that one HTML element up here in our render method. Excuse me. So now that we have our theme provider, we need to use our theme that we just created, right? That came from here. So we need to import that. So if we come down here, we want to import that, we would type in import. It's a default, so we name it. We're going to just name it theme from where it is. So let's take a look. So we're inside of index.js, and we see on the left here, right here, we're inside of index.js. It looks like we need to stay here and then jump into one folder, right? Where we need to stay in the source directory and then jump into the theme. So to do that, we would say stay here, jump into the theme, and grab the index. So if we save this, it's yelling at us. Why is it yelling at us? Right here, we see this error. You see this error? It says theme provider, theme prop is required. So it's telling us that this theme provider takes in a prop of theme. So it breaks our whole application unless we pass it this. So we give it its prop of theme and we set it equal to something. Well, we're setting it equal to the theme we imported. So if we save this, whew, all is well again. So that's important to note that when you do your theme provider, you need a theme. It needs that theme prop. Cool. So now we've set that up. We've built out our new theme with a bunch of defaults. If you wanted to, you could have in this index, you could do a bunch of named import or a bunch of named themes. And then you could pass them in like, say, like a dark theme or a light theme or a under the sea theme or something, or a Tron theme. That would be cool. Or a Pokemon theme. Now we're talking. So then we come inside of our index.js or wherever we want to wrap our theme around, and we wrap it around our app. So we've imported theme provider from style components. I was just wondering if I was muted. I'm not muted, right? We're good. Okay. I've been talking to myself for the last 13 minutes all on my own. No one could hear me. So we import our theme provider, and then we import our theme and we use it. All right. So now that we've done that, I'm going to jump back into our friend component right here, right? And we're going to learn how to actually use this, right? Because we've learned how to build out style components, but now we need to learn how to actually use our theme. So the way we use our theme is, it's kind of a little bit janky, I guess you could say. So we have access because of our style, because of that theme provider, and we're passing a theme around, we have access to it inside of our style component. So what we can do is we can come in here to this red here. I want to move this over, and we want to get rid of, our hard-coded stuff. Like we've hard-coded all of these. So the way to use this is, if you notice, we're inside of backticks. Remember, inside of backticks, we can do JavaScript stuff with our $ curly brackets. So let's do that. Let's do our $ curly brackets right here. So now we can do something JavaScript wise. Well, style components, they have props that are passed in. So they have a prop that's passed in. We're going to call it PR for prop, short, make it a little cleaner on the line. And then it takes in a callback function. So when we have access to this, what we can do is we have PR, and it's just an object, our theme that's being passed around, right? Our theme object. And then we can have access to whatever we passed in that. So if we say primary color, right? If we come back over here, we have primary color. So we should see red turn a color as soon as we save this. So if we push save, all of a sudden it goes to royal blue. So now we have access to that theme. And since our style component is using that dynamic data, it's no longer hard-coded. We could come in here into our theme and we could change this. Like I said, it comes in, they're like, no, actually our primary color is going to be lime. So let's save that. So then all of a sudden it's lime. Or, oh no, let's go back to royal blue. You can update this in one spot, and then it'll update throughout your entire application everywhere you're using this. So if we jump back into our friend component, see our hover down here. Let's change this color right here, our hover color. Let's change it to one of our theme colors. So I'm going to drop a thread and see if we can do that. Change hover color to a theme color. So you can pick whichever one you want. You can have it as your secondary color, your tertiary color, heck, even your danger color, or either one of these too. So we have all of those colors right there we have access to. You can change whatever you want. So I want to see someone change the color and then drop it in there. But you have to change it. You can't just change, say, color green and then change the word to lime or something like that. You actually have to use the props being passed in. So just like on line 9. Cool. I'm going to copy and paste this one for the hover. Paste it in, save this. Nothing changes. Click over here, and then all of a sudden I hover over it, and we see that those colors change. Awesome. So now what if we wanted to change our danger color? So instead of red, we're going to say our danger color is purple, right? We come in here, and then it updates everywhere. Everywhere we were using that instead of all of this hard-coded stuff. So now let's do the button. The next one is let's change the button color. Great. So pick another color for the button. We need to update this one. So I'm going to type this one out. So takes in our props. It's a callback function. And then we it's just an object, right? So that it all does that props is pass an object around, our theme object, right? And it's the reason we know it's theme is because of our index right here. This is the prop, right? Right there. This is just a prop being passed around. And then we've called it theme. That's just the value we're passing around. And that value, all that is just an object. See this? This is just an object. So we're passing around an object right here. We're passing that object in. So then we have access to it. So we props.theme dot, what other ones do we have? Secondary color. We'll do secondary color, copy and paste it so I don't mess it up. Save it. Now we see over there, we got different colors going on. And then over here, I'm now doing purple because I updated my danger color to be purple. We want to move it back to red. Save this. Whew, it is back to red. Awesome. Isn't that kind of sweet how you can update that in one spot and then update it everywhere? So in this case, we are just using our, we're just using it in, inside of here. But if we wanted to, and, inside of our details, we come inside of here, we could use this. So how we would change, say, this details inside of here, this details component, we'd do the same thing. We would come in here, we would import styled, we would decide what we're going to do. So the details, we could do styled details. So we would change this entire div. We could move all of those container classes up inside of this friend style div. And then we could use the colors. We could use the colors to be the same. And then if we needed those to change, we could just update it in that one spot over here in our theme. Awesome. Okay, so now that we've done that, what we can do is we can actually use these props to our advantage. So inside of this styled component, right, we have this styled component right here. What we can do is we can set we can pass props through it. Okay, so for example, let's try this. We could do danger. So we're going to set up a prop of danger and we're going to set it equal to, and what we're going to do is we're going to say basically if info, right, this is our, we'll have an object, it has a name on it. So if info.name is equal to, we're going to say Cora. So if it's strictly equal to Cora, what this will return is this will return a Boolean, either true or false. And now we have access to this up inside of our props. So then what we can do is with our color right here is we can say, all right, so if I'm going to delete this and we're going to reuse it. So let's set up our JavaScripty stuff again. Wow. Okay, so we have our props coming in, right? And it's a callback function. Nothing crazy there. We've talked about this. What we can say is we can say, let's return. So I'm putting this onto the new line. We're going to return if the props.danger that's coming in, if that's true, what we want to do is we want to use our theme color of danger color. Otherwise, let's just use our theme color of primary color. So if we save this, we can we can use our JavaScript knowledge and our props to update something. So what this is saying is all right, if the info.name is equal to Cora, then we want to change the color. We were going to pass this prop in as true. So this prop comes in on that props object of danger. So it's true since this translates down to true. Info.name is equal to Cora is true. But it's only true that one time, right? Because if we're up here in our app where we see our friends, we're mapping over our friends. And for each one of these friends, we're passing in info, which is just a friend object. So it's only going to happen if there's a Cora. And then we, up here, we're using a tertiary conditional rendering to say, if it's true, then do the first color. Otherwise, do the second color. So that's kind of cool stuff that you can do with style components. It allows you to start using JavaScript in your styles, and allows you to use variables and props to manipulate some stuff. And that can be super handy to like change out. Like you could do some crazy stuff. Like if this prop coming in here, say if Bay is, instead of saying all of this stuff, you could say like, ah, you won, blah, blah, blah. And then the rest of them are just like, you know, these details. You do whatever you want. All right. So up to this point, how are we feeling? Kind of wild. Kind of wild the way this all works. The easiest way to remember the way this all breaks down is these are just CSS. This is just CSS rules that you have access to props using a callback function. And then to use them, like you don't necessarily need to use this crazy like props being passed around like this with the danger and stuff like that. But for sure, this is where it's super handy. You can build your theme out, build out all of your colors and paddings and stuff like that. And then you can just use them by using them like this, by passing them in. So that way you can stay consistent everywhere. You can use the same color and you can only write it once. You can keep all of your code dry. One other kind of thing we can demo with this is if we say we're up here in our where's our app? Up here in our app, what we can do is we can pass some props around with this. We can pass, say, a bold prop. So bold is not defined. So if we want to pass bold around, right? So if we pass this string around of bold, or if we want it just to be a Boolean, so we want it to be true, we could just pass it in like this with React. So we can pass this bold prop around into our friend. So if our friend comes in here, we can then accept this prop here, and then we can pass it into our friend here. Bold equals whatever this is being passed in, right? Because we pass it in as a Boolean. So then this is true or false. And then we can use it up here on our props. So we can do like our callback function with our props. And we can do bold right here, saying like, all right, if bold is true, we want to set this to bold. Otherwise, we want to set it to just the initial value. Initial. Oops, I missed that PR right there. Right, it comes in on the props. So then we can see that these are back to bold if bold is being passed in. And then since it's being passed in on every single one of them, it's the same. What we can do is we can demo this by maybe taking one of these friends and rendering a component outside of here. We'll get rid of this key because we're not mapping over anything. And then a friend is a object, right? With a, I think the friend has a name on it. So name, and we'll just call it Tony Stark. And then we'll get rid of this one. We'll save this. So now just Tony Stark is bolded and the rest of these aren't, because we're passing just that prop in on this one friend. All right, who's confused? All right, we're gonna take our last 5-minute break. Then we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about a few other things like transition some transitions and stuff like that. We'll kind of just show you some of that. And then we'll spend some time talking about the sprint challenge. Everyone good with that? All right, so go ahead and take your final 5-minute break. I'll drop a questions thread again, and if we have questions, drop them, and then I will see you back in 5. Start. All right. And we're back. I hope you had a wonderful last 5-minute break. How exactly is the function getting the props? So inside of here, our callback function, where's our friend? There's our friend. So the style component has props passed into it, and so we have access to it. And so what it is that props is just an object that gets passed in right here on this style component, just like how we pass props around when we're invoking functions or invoking components, we can pass props around. What this one does is it takes in those props. It's just an object, right? So that's how we have access to them. That's how we have access to the danger and the bold. And then how we have access to the theme is actually up inside of the index.js where we wrapped the app itself. Anywhere we used styled components, that theme object is being passed in as theme like this. So this is just like another prop being passed in. Theme, you know, just like right here. Only it's at the top level, and so it's everywhere that there's a styled component. Okay, awesome. We are doing great. So let's talk about a couple transition stuff. Kind of show what and how to use those. There's just some more demoing as far as that goes, and then we can talk about today's tomorrow's sprint challenge. Okay, so if we come over here, let's get rid of this. If we come back over here and we kind of see our styles going on over here, let's go ahead and on hover on our button, let's add a background color. So let's do background color. Now remember, this is just CSS, right? So we have to use, we're back to CSS. We're not inside of JSX where we have to do like camel casing. We're back to just our normal CSS, background dash color, justified dash content, you know, but we're back to just the dash casing, not with the camel casing. So if we do a color here, we'll just say cyan. Save this. We don't see anything come over here. And if we hover, we see that it's kind of, it's very beautiful. I'm an excellent stylist right here. I'm a UI developer, 100%. Amazing. Those colors don't clash at all, right? But we see it's kind of like really jarring, really fast. So what we can use is we can use transitions to kind of smooth some stuff out. How many of you have ever used CSS tricks before or gone on to CSS tricks? Because CSS tricks, if you haven't, you totally should. Anything style or CSS related, CSS tricks is amazing. So let's go ahead and make this a little bit wider, and I'm going to kind of show you what I would do. So let's type in CSS tricks, and then CSS tricks in itself is amazing. So if we just go there, right, it looks really cool, I hope, because they do CSS stuff. But then there's articles, videos, all sorts of stuff. Guides is like amazing. This right here, this guide to Flexbox, this is what helped me understand Flexbox. And then the guide to grid. Ooh, look, it was even updated a couple days ago, or I guess a month ago. This stuff is amazing when it comes to understanding CSS. So highly recommend you bookmarking this. So how I would do this, one of two ways, is I would just start a new tab, right? I would take CSS tricks because I like to look for them there, and then whatever I'm trying to do. So I'm going to try to do transition, and then I look for the one with CSS tricks transition. So we're going to be using the transition property, and then kind of going through this. So they have some great breakdowns of how stuff works and where to use it, how to use it, examples, other related stuff with it. Like CSS tricks is amazing. So with the transition property, we can see that the shorthand for this, so it says property is shorthand property used for representing all 4 of the transition related longhand properties, which would be transition property, transition duration, transition timing function, and transition delay. So we can use a couple of these. We're going to use 3 of them. we're going to use the transition property, the transition duration, and then the function, the timing function, just like this down here. See this one right here? So what this allows us to do is the first one is the transition property. So what one we're going to transitioning. So they use background color, and then they say a seconds and then an ease. So we're going to try that. So we're going to come over here into our hover. And then inside of our hover, we want to add this transition. So we do transition. Is that spelled right? Transition. And then we're going to say we want to transition everything inside of here. We want to do it for 2 seconds. And we're going to use, so here's the timing functions. We can see what they are. They use ease everywhere. If we come down here to the bottom to timing functions, we can see what they are. Ease, linear, ease in, out, step, start, step, end. So we're going to come back over here. We're going to make this a little smaller. And we're going to use the ease in, ease out. Ease dash in dash out. So if we save this, we come over here, we should see it goes in really nice and slow. Ooh, look at that. And it does everything inside of here. It does the background color of the text, or does the background, it does the color of the text, everything inside of this. We're saying all of the stuff inside of here to do this. 2 is kind of slow, so let's go down to 1 second and see what it looks like. Oh yeah, that's amazing. But then it's really jarring off, right? So like we're only doing the transition on, but not really the transition off. So what we can do is we can tell our transitions down here at the bottom, transition, to change everything to match it 1 second to go off of it. So we're going to do ease out, ease in the same way, ease out, in and out. So now if we come back over here, we go on it, we come off of it, and it goes off nice and slow. So we could make this one maybe a little faster. So like maybe a half a second. So it comes on really slow, but then it fades off a little faster. Whew. Yeah, that's some great UI right there I've made. And all of you are copying exactly what I made. So you're all just as good as stylists as I am, or UI designers. Cool. So another one we can play with is we can play with the transform. So what we can do is we could go back over here and we could learn about the transform property, right? So if we find the T, we could, oh wow, those are teeny. Transform. Well, I guess it's teeny because I made it really small, huh? So we can do a transform. What it does is it takes a scale. So let's play with that. Inside of here, let's try this on hover. Let's do, actually, you know what? Let's do our button. Let's go inside of our button. And then inside of this button, let's add a hover on this button. Right. So we're going to go inside of here, add a button, hover. And then inside of here, what we're going to want to do is we're going to transform. And we're going to change the scale by 2. So if we save this, we hover over these, nothing happens. But if we go over these, whoa, look at those buttons. They just get massive. What we can do is we could also add some transition. So if we copy this, put it down here, it goes really big, but then it doesn't really come out really well. So what we need to do is we need to copy this one. Oops. And put it up on our button. So now what it should do is should come in and out nice and easy. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm a great designer, aren't I? Thank you. Thank you everyone for telling me how wonderful I am at designing this awesome UI. So these are just some stuff that you can play with. All this is showing you is that this is just CSS. So you do all of this normally in your .css file, but in style components, we can bring it in here and do it inside of this. Also, we can use inside of our style components, we can use props. And this is like the biggest advantage to this is we can create themes and then pass those themes around by wrapping them in a theme provider and then using those to go forward with our styles. One other one we can do. This one is another cool one. So up here at the top, if you type in opacity, say 0. If we save this, watch what happens. Our whole component disappears, goes away because we told it to be 0, right? We told it to not show. So that's the first thing we have to do. Now, there's this thing inside of style components. There's a named export style components called keyframes that we can use. And so since it's a named export, we have to import it via the named way. So with the curly braces. So this is called keyframes. So if we import this at the top, and then what we need to do is we need to create a variable. We're going to call it keyframes, like this, shorthand, KF, that works. And then set it equal to something. So we need to use the keyframes that we just brought in. And then we're going to do our backticks like we've used down below. And then we're just going to say 100%. So at 100%, we want the opacity to come back in and be 1. Opacity 1. If we save this, nothing changes. And if we hover over this, we can see that we're declaring it, but we're never using it. So in order to use it in our style component down here next to our transition, what we can do is we can say opacity. It starts at 0. We want to do animation, because CSS has these really cool things called animation. We want to use our keyframes, and then we want to say how fast we want it. So we'll say half a second. So 0.5 seconds. There we go. We want it to ease in and out, and we want it to go forwards. So now if we save this, we refresh, and it fades in. Woo, all right. So there's some fun stuff you can do with CSS and styled components. They are awesome. Now, let's just review what we've done today, and then understand, ask questions, I guess, about tomorrow. And then I'll kind of review what you really need for tomorrow. Okay, so quick review of styled components. In order to use styled components, you need to npm install them into your package, into your application you're building. So you can come into your package and look inside of your dependencies and see if you have styled components. If they're not there, you need to run that npm i -- save styled components. So they need to be brought in. Once that package is brought in, then we can use them. The way we use them is inside of our components. We have to import styled, the default, from styled components. We need to remember these 3 things when we're doing these. Style components are built outside of the function or the component that they're serving. They have to be capitalized, and you cannot forget your semicolons. So then the way to use them is you build out your variable, so const whatever, and then it's capitalized. And then you use it style dot whatever HTML element you're going to be replacing. So in our case, when we built out the styled friend, we did this. This was a div, so we replaced that div up to here. And then we use our backticks, and then it's just CSS from there. Yep, I can put the attendance code in one more time. Chat, attendance code, paste. All right. So then inside of our backticks, all it is just regular CSS. Nothing crazy inside of here. We just use regular CSS. And then to use this style component, we use that name or that variable name that we created. And it replaces the whole div or that whole button. You know, we have that button one right here. Now we can pass props into the style component, and then we have access to them inside of here using these callback functions. And since we're in backticks, we can use JavaScript interpolation doing the $ curly brackets. And when there's a props on that callback function, takes in a props argument, and then we have access to whatever props are being passed in. Now with this, we have also access to a theme provider from style components. So inside of our index.js, what we can do is we can import a named export from style components with theme provider. And then we can wrap whatever we want to use this theme with this theme provider. The theme provider must have a theme. If you remember earlier, we saw that theme, I didn't have the theme on there and it broke the application. It's a prop that's required. So then what we did is we built our theme. It's just an object with key value pairs that we can then use to style our application. So that theme object is being passed around, where's our right here, through our theme provider. Anywhere inside of app now, anywhere that this is being wrapped has access to that theme inside of our style components. So then to use that, we pass our props in and we have access to it. All right. Now, let's talk about, we have a few minutes left over for today. Any questions? So, okay, so in this one, right? So the index.js inside of our theme folder, we've made a theme with an index.js. So you could change this to be a different name. It doesn't necessarily need to be thin index. It could be like dark theme, or it could be under the sun theme. It could be Pokemon theme. It could be anything theme, or you can just use an index. So an index is usually just like the base file for the exports that you can then use. So don't get too tripped up on that. All right, so we can see our awesome styles going on over here that we used in our style friend component. Whew. All right, any questions up to this? Does our sprint assignment have to be responsive? No, your sprint assignment does not have to be responsive, although if it is, that's awesome. So I'm assuming your sprint challenge assignment, right? The sprint challenge. So let's talk about the sprint challenge real quick. Now, with the sprint challenge, the things you need to be able to do and make sure you're able to do is you're going to be creating a React app. You need to know how to pass props around and how to do some state, you know, how to create a new slice of state. And then you need to know how to use the use effect. So remember on Monday, we did props and state. And then on Tuesday, we did some more state. And then on Wednesday, we did use effect. So that was yesterday. You need to know those three things. So your, we provided an update to the guide project. It should be updated. You should be able to poll right now, and it should have everything. All of my files are saved. So you should be golden. Give it 45 seconds and try it again. So make sure that you know how to use React. You know, when we're doing a React component, we do import React. You can see up here, right? We import React from React. And then inside of here, we're returning a friend component, a function, right? Capitalized. And then inside of here, what it does is it takes some props and then returns some UI. If we look up here in our app.js, you need to know how to map over some data. Remember how we hit an API right here with using this use effect? You need to know how to do this. So you're going to hit an API, and then you're going to get some data back. So make sure you do your Axios get right. And then you're going to get some data back. So make sure you set up your .then and your .catch. And then as soon as in your .then, as soon as you get your data back, that's where you want to just use it. Don't set it to a variable or do something wonky like that. Just put it into state, right? Create your slice of state and throw it in your state right there. And then you have access to it and you can loop over. You're going to end up mapping over some data and returning a new component. So you need to make sure you know how to do the use effect. You need to make sure you know how to do these slices of state, and you need to make sure you know how to pass props down to a component. And then inside of your props, you need to make sure you know how to destructure them either this way or this way, it doesn't matter, but that you have access to them. And then you spit some stuff out. And then you will need to have at least one styled component in your sprint challenge. So you will need to have one styled component. So you will need to add styled components to your project. You'll need to import styled and then use it. You can set up your theme at the top using your theme provider, wrap in your application and passing in a theme. You can create your theme and update all your stuff there. And then inside of here, you could do something as simple as just like colors, like background color and color inside of here. Okay, any questions? Right, I don't really, it's not working. What in the world? It says it's pushed. Let me just add a comment right here. Comment. Comment. Oh, Ryder got it to work. So try it again. Maybe stop your terminal and then run that and then restart it or something. Okay, so a couple questions. What change did the animation make on the final output? So if we refresh our page, do you see how it was gone to begin with? There's nothing there, that opacity. So here, let's slow this down. So let's change this to 5 seconds. So see how it's slowly fading in? That's what that one is. That's that animation using keyframes. All right, any final questions? I'm going to put the questions down here. Questions. Remember that your sprint challenge opens tomorrow, like at midnight. So you have access to it, but then it's strict 5 p.m. Eastern or Pacific Standard Time, Lambda time, that it's closed. So make sure you get on early and connect it via CodeGrade, so that you don't have to worry about any of the CodeGrade issues, and then you can just start coding away. Hit MVP, just go for MVP. If you run into problems, just take one piece at a time. Just figure out one piece at a time. Okay, so I see a couple questions inside of here. So your question again about the style sheets. So yes and no. Like, you could totally have a style sheet if you want some overarching styles, or maybe a style reset. You can import that, like a style reset for your styles. But maybe you don't want that, and you just want to use styled components, and then you just end up using styled components inside of your components. So there's cases for both of them. A lot of the times you will have a style sheet that has a reset on it, and then maybe some global styles, as far as like you want to set your body to go full width, or you want to set your margins up on that. But then inside of that, you want to use your components, style components. Well, we've been spending more time covering cyclones going forward. Nope, this is it. Next week, we're going to learn about forms. We're going to learn how to use forms, and we're going to learn React router, forms, and then Cypress, some testing. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, reach out. We'll be monitoring the help channel now that I'm done teaching for the week. I can not have to prepare as much.